Welcome to Wild Side, your wild true crime podcast.
We're your hosts, who are sisters, storytellers, and truth seekers.
I'm Bailey, a therapist who is fascinated by all weird and dark human behaviors.
And I'm Chelsea, an educator here to unearth the facts behind the cases.
We cover true crime because some cases are just too dark to forget,
and others are too wild to ignore.
We're so glad you're here, so buckle up
and enjoy the ride.
But yeah, I don't think you look like Tom Hanks in Philadelphia right now, Chelsea.
Well, I feel like it, so for whatever that's worth.
Chelsea and I are on a self-deprecatory ship that's sinking right now.
Thank you.
And what did I look like Tammy? Y'all know the white trash who always has a cigarette? I look like that, just with red hair. So that was what I told
It's amazing
Chelsea.
to me how often I look at myself and I literally think to myself, you look like Charlize Theron in the movie Monster. Like that happens to me on the reg.
Oh man. I don't know why I work with kids, because I just scare them, I'm sure.
I mean, same. I think it's character building, honestly, at the end of the day. Like, we're better for it.
Yeah, they're better for it. Well, just a heads up, you guys, Chelsea has had, what's that title called? The bad, terrible...
Alexander. Yeah, Alexander and the terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day, and he thinks he's going to just move to Australia. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's been Chelsea today. So y'all just like prickle up, because she's going to probably be pretty prickly.
You know, some days it just be like that. Do you know what I mean? And I think I feel like I need to advocate for the people who are like, I don't know why I have bad days, because some days are bad. Like some days you just are not in it. You're not in it to win it. And today I'm just not in it to win it.
You're not in it to win
Nothing about it.
But I did hear a really great inspirational quote today. And it said, depression can't hit a moving target.
Okay.
And I was like, ooh.
I mean, I think that's fair. And I did play tennis tonight. And that's a double-edged sword. You know, I got out, I'm moving, I'm really trying to focus on some health goals and whatnot, which is, I mean, Bailey knows I'm always, you know, gonna run some marathon Tough Mudder. And then I'm like, never mind, I'm just going to live on my couch for the next 3 years. Like, it just kind of depends, right? So I do feel better as far as, like, I got out, I got my blood pumping and all the things. But, yeah, it's just been a cray day.
Well, before we get into this short side, you guys, 2 shout-outs. One to Christy, who emailed us and was just like, I love you, thank you so much. And one to our now ex-follower that said that we suck so bad. It was excruciating to listen to, and she had to unfollow. And I was like, okay, no props. I was like, no props.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Like, how can you suck so bad that someone had to unfollow you?
Well, I think, to be fair, right, to be super fair, it was an episode we just were not on our game. Like, y'all have noticed, like, there are some episodes that you can feel it, and sometimes you're just like, ooh, they were not in it. And it's honestly just because Chelsea and I, you know, we're really busy people. And I'm not trying to sound like a martyr or anything like that. It's just like, we're really, 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 really busy people. And it really is a miracle that we can even keep a bi-weekly schedule at this point. So yeah, sometimes it doesn't have a whole lot of heart in it, but we're human and we do our best.
Yeah. But again, I love feedback like that. I mean, seriously, I really do. It's like, thank you. I do wish it was more specific. I wish it wasn't just like, it was so bad because, you know, I hate your voice, or, you know what I mean? Like, it was just bad.
It was like pronunciations. Like, we don't pronunciate things well a lot of times, which,
well,
fairsies, I guess.
Fair.
Like, and then, like, I guess our relationship is so boring. I don't know. But anyways, let's not beat that horse. So for those of y'all who are still hanging in there by a thread on the sinking Titanic, hopefully this is going to be your string quartet playing for you as we go down this episode.
Yeah, and if it's not, then, you know, be patient. Maybe we'll resurface. Maybe we'll just have betterness. Did I pronounce
Well,
that
yeah.
correctly?
Or it's just oh, Chelsea's so good at passive aggressive now. It's good. But this short side, you guys, is a little bit history. If y'all don't like history, we try to make it fun because I think history is fascinating. Chelsea and I both. And one of the things that we noticed was how petty people in history are. So this is history being a petty Betty.
And it's good to know that petty Betties have existed, petty Betty things have existed from long time ago. It's not a new thing, and I think that every now and again, when you are searching through historic events, you come across a historical event with a name that's so ridiculous, it almost guarantees that people will remember it. And today we are going to be talking about one of those events, and it is literally called the Pastry War. Pastry, Pastry. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly, the Pastry War.
Shots fired. I really hope that this is about pastries.
Well, I guess we'll find out, right? And if you've ever seen one of those weirdest wars in history list, you've probably seen this one, the Pastry War, towards the top. And honestly, it sounds exactly like what you'd expect from one of those clickbait articles, which those kind of are my favorite articles. I love when BuzzFeed, finds gets into my algorithm. But France supposedly, this is how it goes. France supposedly went to war with Mexico because of pastries. The old croissant.
Right. Croissant. Have you seen that video of those Australian comedians and they go croissant, croissant? Have you seen that?
I have. It
So
brings a
great.
lot of joy to my
It
life.
does. It does me too. I love Australian and New Zealand humor. It's one of my faves.
Mhm. Yeah, it's good stuff. So, when I first started researching this episode, I thought we were getting into another fun little historical oddity. Kind of like our fruitcake episode, if you guys remember that one. Instead, I really love it. Hey, side note, did you know that we stopped and got a fruitcake after doing that episode? It was fantastic.
Yes.
Loved it. It really
Was
was
it
good. It
good?
was amazing, and I was shocked. I was shooketh.
Oh.
So unlike the fruitcake episode, I found a story about a brand new nation at the time struggling to survive, a European power looking to expand its influence, international diplomacy falling apart, and a military commander whose amputated leg somehow became a national symbol. It was a lot. By the end of today's episode, I think you'll agree the pastries are actually the least interesting part of this story.
Not that I wish harm on any person, but I kind of hope that it's like this dude ate so many pastries that he got a bad case of the beatus and had to get his leg cut off. So that's where my head's at.
I don't know. Are all pastries sweet? Can pastries be savory? I don't know. I'm not a pastry chef, but don't worry because this is about pastries, right? Like, so any way you slice it, it will be about pastries. Believe it or not, they're not as big of a deal as you'd think based off the title, but they will be there. So before we get into the bakery, we have to understand why France and Mexico were already heading towards a collision. So that's the scene, right? It's 1821. Mexico had only recently gained its independence from Spain after more than decade of really nasty fighting. And that, of course, is always something that sounds like a good ending, but not always. When you declare your independence or you gain your independence, it's not always like the cherry on top, right? Winning independence is one thing, but figuring out what comes next is something entirely different. You know what I mean? Like it really is a process. So imagine finally moving out on your own, essentially, except your house is falling apart, your bank account is empty, your family is arguing over everything, and nobody can agree whose name should be on the mortgage. And that was basically Mexico in 1821.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah, I thought so. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, a new nation had to decide, or the new nation, I should say, Mexico had to decide what kind of government it wanted to be, right? Is it going to be a monarchy, a republic? How much power should belong to the central government? How much authority should individual states have, right? Like all of these things are always in the debate sessions. And they weren't calm political debates. People were literally fighting over them. So now they're having some internal conflict, sometimes with speeches, but sometimes with bullets, right? These fights they really ranged in what type of fights they were. And while all of that was happening, the economy was truly just hanging on by a thread. More than a decade of war had devastated farms, disrupted trade, damaged roads, drained the treasury, and left the government drowning in debt. Tax revenues were unreliable, money was scarce, and every new administration inherited problems that it really couldn't afford to fix. Then there was one more problem. The government itself seemed to change constantly. Presidents were elected, they were overthrown, they were replaced, they were restored, then they were overthrown again. Military leaders launched coups, regional rebellions broke out, political alliances shifted so often that historians sometimes joke if you blinked during this period, Mexico probably had a different government by the time you opened your eyes. Like, honestly, they're really not being that overly, what am I trying to say? They're not exaggerating that much. They're really not being that
Dramatic.
dramatic. Like it
Yeah.
truly was changing on the reg. So we have that scene set. Now imagine you're not a politician. Imagine you're just trying to run a business. 1 month you have one set of laws. A few months later, there's a revolution, or maybe it's a revolt, right? Like you don't know. The next government changes tax policies. Another military uprising interrupts trades. Courts stop functioning consistently. Contracts become difficult to enforce. And running a business under those conditions would have to be a literal nightmare. But despite all the chaos, people still saw opportunities. And here comes the British. We're going to have the Brits enter stage right.
They
They
always do. I was gonna say, it's so funny that you said that when you were talking about, like, Mexico being at its most vulnerable, and I was like, "And here comes the British coming in when you're down at your worst, trying to, like, take
I
advantage
mean,
of that."
the Brits, they're a really brilliant and militarily awesome country. Like they've had some really good histories. They've had
At
some really
times.
bad
Yeah.
falls, but they've had some good histories. So
Yeah.
more specifically, British investors decided that they were going to start pouring money into mining operations. Okay. European merchants opened businesses. Ships carrying imported goods arrived regularly, in Veracruz. And yes, of those people that were coming in to invest in Mexico were French, and specifically French bakers.
Ooh, there it
And
is.
I have to say that's probably the most French sentence that I'll say all day, right?
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
the French pastry, here we are. I know that you're just like, come on, Chelsea, get to the freaking point. And guys, whatever. I like knowing the history of places, and honestly, like, just listen to it. It's a cool thing. History is cool. But now we have French pastries. Here we are. French pastries already had an international reputation, and the wealthier residents of Mexico City happily paid for European breads and desserts.
As they should. If you guys have never had European breads and desserts, when I tell you that it changes your tongue chemistry forever, it does.
It really does. I mean, my son still talks about going and getting, these little sweet different things when we visited them in Germany. Like, it's just hard to explain. So, one of those bakers, right, was a man named Monsieur Remontel. And Monsieur Remontel, he owned a bakery in Tacubaya, and this is just outside Mexico City. So it's a town outside of Mexico City. Now, if you've never heard of him before, of course, I did not either. Don't feel bad. He wasn't a politician or a general or a super important diplomat, right? He literally was just some dude trying to sell pastries. And yet somehow history attached his name to an international conflict. According to the surviving accounts, Remontel's bakery was damaged during civil unrest in the late 1820s. Many popular versions of the story claim Mexico soldiers stormed into the bakery, ate pastries, looted the shop, and then walked out without paying. We're just going to let that sink in for a second.
I mean, I can believe it just because that's what countries do in times of unrest. Not like countries, but like people will take
People,
advantage of times of unrest to do stuff like that. That's what I'm trying to say.
sure. But you have to think, like, this is the sentence that goes hand in hand with this name being attached to an international conflict. Like, it's just kind of wild. And really, again, yes, was it all bad? Sure. Sure. You go in, you rate, you eat the pastries, you loot the shop, you walk out, you don't pay, But there's just one problem. Historians aren't completely sure that's exactly what happened. What we do know is that Remontel believed Mexican military personnel had damaged his business during a period of political violence, and he demanded compensation for his losses. He was going to get his.
And here we go.
I mean, literally, isn't that usually how the best stories start? Is like, I'm going to get mine. Not around here.
Yeah.
Now, France eventually bundled Remontel's complaint together with a long list of other claims from other French citizens living in Mexico, and they demanded a whopping 600,000 pesos in compensation. Now, I'm sure, Bailey, you're like, well, what would that
I
be?
absolutely want to know what that is today. That's my favorite. That's my favorite thing, is to figure out money from a time period and put it in today's perspective.
I know. So, and to use those words to put that into perspective, that's an astonishing amount of money. We're talking close to 18 million US dollars today.
It doesn't sound like a lot because 18 million really isn't a lot in the scheme of like a country, but we're talking about a time of disruption, and they're probably like totally poor. and bankrupt.
Well, exactly. That's why I went on the whole rant of what their, what their country state was. You guys are
Yeah.
welcome. It's because they couldn't pay their bills, right? They could barely keep their nose above water. They were bringing in outside investors because they were just floundering, right? Now, Mexico looks at France and essentially said, "We don't have it." Fair. I mean, right? Fair. We
Yeah.
literally just gained our independence. We're not doing great. We're not in our best season. And France looked back and essentially said, "Sounds like a you problem."
That sounds like something French would
I think
say.
that sounds like something anybody on the other side of the fence would say, right? And
Yeah.
so
Fair.
negotiations dragged on for months. And eventually, France did get tired of waiting. So they did what every emotionally mature nation apparently does, and that was they sent warships. Like a whole French fleet.
To go and get them pastry money.
They're going to get that pastry money back.
They said,
You better
"Ha ha, we
believe
do
it.
not care that you are poor." Right? They
That's
sent
right.
a whole fleet of French warships.
They did. So the year is now, it's November 1838, and a French fleet arrives off the coast of Veracruz and establishes a naval blockade, cutting off one of Mexico's busiest ports. Like they literally, in my mind, they're just like, like a domino line. They're just like, "Nope. What are y'all gonna do now? What are y'all gonna do?"
Yeah, it makes me think of, I don't know why this popped in my head, but Kathy Bates and fried green tomatoes.
Yeah, like the parking spot
Like,
situation.
the parking spot situation where she was just like, "No, absolutely not." And just because she could, she just rammed their
I mean,
car.
essentially, right? And French warships bombarded the massive fortress of San Juan de Ulele. Ulula? Ulula. Ulula.
I'm hooked on phonics and phonics hooked on me.
Butterfly in the sky. Take a look. It's in a book. You stupid redneck. Like, whatever. They took over, they bombarded this big old fortress whose cannons had guarded Veracruz for centuries. And after heavy shelling, the fortress surrendered, giving France control of the harbor and bringing trade to a standstill. And if you thought the story couldn't possibly get any weirder, congratulations. You, my friend, have officially underestimated history. Because the attack drew former president and military commander Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna back into the spotlight. Now, okay, let me just real quickly tell you about this. 2 years earlier, his reputation had been shattered after Texas won their independence. Okay, so his ego was pretty bruised. Now
Yeah.
he rushed to help defend Veracruz against the French. During the fighting, cannon fire shattered one of his legs, forcing doctors to amputate it. Oddly, though, losing his leg kind of put him in this instant hero spot again. He now became, kind of the Purple Heart, wounded warrior status. And then someone decided the leg itself, the amputated leg, deserved a state funeral. Literally, just the leg.
This is ridiculous. You guys are poor. Why are we doing all of this extra
You know
stuff
what? That
for a
is actually a
leg?
great point. I hadn't thought of that. You know, like you really offended to the point that they, offended another country to the point that they have a blockade and are attacking your massive fortress. A guy loses his leg via amputation and you're going to do a whole state funeral, right? And literally the amputated leg was reportedly buried with full military honor, complete with soldiers, music, speeches, and mourners at the funeral.
Yeah, it's like, hey, let's not talk about the fact that we have 412 naval ships, spitting out cannons and blocking all of our trade that brings us revenue into our country. Let's instead focus on a full military funeral for some homeboy's amputated leg.
Well, now ironically, again, you guys, I know it's a kind of a bait and switch. You really thought this was all going to be about pastries, and it's just a touch of pastries, and the powdered sugar is really all over everything else. Now, if that isn't enough, us talking about this amputated leg, years later, after Santa Anna once again fell from power, an angry crowd dug the leg back up and they dragged it through the streets of Mexico City. Like, made a whole spectacle out of it. Like, to me, the only thing I can think of is Dave Chappelle's skit where he's Rick James, and he's just like, "Screw your couch." Like, they just are like, "Screw this guy." Hate him, hate his leg. In fact, I
Oh
hate that leg
my
so much when he gets back
gosh.
up.
And it just goes to show you how fickle the populace is.
It truly is. It truly is.
Like how, and it goes back to like our fascination with sociology and um what's it called, Chelsea? Like when society goes through, oh, like hysteria, like
Mhm. Yeah.
societal wide hysteria. Like it's crazy. It's just crazy to me.
Because I always think to myself, these people who dug it up never, I doubt, I would bet money that they did not think at some point in their life, they're like, one day I might get mad enough that I'm going to dig up a leg and then tie that leg to a string and pull it through the city. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just wild people will do
Yeah.
when they're in that state.
Mm.
So now, okay, back to the whole thing, and we're almost finished. Here, eventually, here comes the Brits. Eventually, Britain steps back in, and this time they mediate the conflict. And in March of 1839, the two countries decided, of course, two countries, meaning France and Mexico, they reached an agreement. Okay. France lifted its blockade, withdrew its fleet, and Mexico agreed to pay the compensation. I mean, we're not going to go into how they paid it. It was a process, right? But it was deemed the Pastry War, okay? And the pastry war lasted really only about a few months, a couple of months. It didn't reshape the world. It didn't topple empires, but it did, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, it did expose just how history simply has an incredible habit of remembering the pettiest detail in the room. And people will act out over the pettiest things.
Dude.
So, yeah, I feel like
Yeah.
today, we don't remember the years of political instability. We don't remember the debt. We don't remember the failed negotiations. We remember the pastries that started it. Or in Bailey's case, maybe the leg being dragged through town.
Yeah, that is so funny. It's just hilarious to me. I don't know why. Like, I don't know. And geopolitics on a whole petty level.
I
You know
mean,
what I mean?
I'm here for it, and I would not be surprised if every single major event that happens in history starts with something that petty. I would almost bet money.
Yeah. 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 Well, that is hilarious. I'm glad everybody, got to shake hands and come to a happy little conclusion. I I too have a petty war because I think all wars essentially could be considered petty. Like they usually start off petty over ego, but anyway. But my question for you guys, and more specifically, Chelsea, for you, let's take out the pastry war. And if I ask you, like, what do you think typically starts a war?
I mean, before today, I would not have said pastries, but I mean, like, apparently
Hmm.
food products start wars.
But outside of the pastry war, what would you say
I mean,
typically starts
I
war?
feel like it would be, like defending a girlfriend's honor. Like, usually somebody is in a fight over a female and either,
Like Helen of Troy and
yes, yes,
Cleopatra and what's his face? The dude, homeboy.
um, yeah.
Caesar was killed, and then it was John Paul, no,
No,
Mark.
Mark
Oh
Anthony.
God, ooh, Mark Anthony. Thank you, thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like something like that, right? Or we
No.
talked about in another short side the assassination of Franz Ferdinand.
Yeah.
Okay, but I bet you would not guess that part of a piece of anatomy, specifically an ear, would be the start of a war.
I don't understand.
So this is the War of Jenkins
Jenkins
Ear,
ear, like his the
literally.
literal ear? Okay,
Yes. Yes.
whatever. Whatever you say.
Sounds fake, right? Sounds like that's just kind of like the pastry war. I assumed that it was just like a funny little name that was attached to it. Nope. 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 Shh. It's actually what an international war turned into because of an ear. Okay. And this one's a little bit earlier than yours. This is like the 1730s into the 1740s. But there was a guy, Robert Jenkins, okay? A British merchant captain, and he really did lose part of his ear during a confrontation with the Spanish. So after learning about the pastry war, right? History somehow looked at an ear and said, "Yep, that's another perfectly reasonable thing to name a war." Like what? You know what I mean?
And it always makes you, I mean, I guess it's one of those things where you're like, I mean, what else are we gonna call it? Literally was a war that started over pastries, right? So I'm kind of in that same mindset. Like it was literally a war that started over an ear, so that's what we're gonna call it. And you're like, I mean, they're not wrong. So that's kind of what I'm thinking is gonna happen.
So we're gonna start off in the Caribbean or whatever you guys, however you pronounce it, in the early 1700s. This was a time where conflict had been brewing for years and years, and it sets the stage for this Petty Betty War. So the Caribbean in the early 1700s, at the time, Spain controlled one of the largest empires on earth. Its colonies stretched across Central and South America, much of the Caribbean, and parts of North America. Those colonies produced enormous wealth, primarily through silver, sugar, tobacco, and other valuable goods. So naturally, Spain wanted to keep those profits for itself, so it tightly controlled who was allowed to trade with its colonies. Okay. Britain,
Oh no, the Brits.
the redcoats
Yes,
are coming.
the redcoats are coming.
Britain, meanwhile, looked at all those same colonies and, of course, saw opportunity. British merchants desperately wanted access to Spanish markets, but Spain was not interested in sharing or playing nice. Legitimate trade was heavily restricted, which meant smuggling quickly became one of the Caribbean's worst kept secrets. The British insisted they were simply trying to make an honest living, and the Spanish insisted that they were catching smugglers. So, as you can imagine, that's not mixing. It's like oil and water, right? So, to enforce its trade laws, Spain relied on a fleet of Coast Guard vessels known as the guardacostas. Their job was kind of like modern day uh, merchant people that we hire for ship, like cargo ships, that they fight off pirates and stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
They're
their
kind of
job
like
was,
watchdogs, right? You're kind
yeah,
of like guard dogs, watchdogs of
yeah,
the sea.
exactly.
Not to be confused with chicken of the sea, just watchdogs of the sea.
Correct. Their job was to stop suspicious ships, search the cargo, confiscate anything they believed had been smuggled. And sometimes those inspections ended peacefully. Sometimes merchants lost their cargo, and sometimes things become much more personal and petty. So, fast forward to April 9th, 1731. British merchant captain Robert Jenkins was sailing his ship, the Rebecca, near the coast of Cuba when it was intercepted by a Spanish patrol commanded by Captain Juan de Leon Fandino. At first, there was nothing remarkable about the encounter. Ships were boarded all the time. The Spanish searched the cargo, questioned the crew, inspected the paperwork, carried out what they considered a routine kind of customs inspection, if you will. But somewhere during that inspection, things went awry, right? Exactly what happened, of course, this is the 1730s, so it kind of depends on which historian's version you read, which side of history you kind of believe in. You know what I mean?
Correct. But I also do want to make a side note. Technically, his ship was named Rebecca. And that feels very much like this might have been a little bit of a war over a female.
I think you're reaching, but I get it.
I mean, Rebecca's a pretty girly name for a ship. It's not like the Black Pearl or the Duchess. Like, it's just Rebecca.
Or
Or
Gen
Janae,
Egg.
right? It's probably named after his
Yeah,
girlfriend, Rebecca.
maybe. So again, kind of depending on the accounts, but according to Jenkins, all right, homeboy Jenkins, Robert Jenkins, Captain Fandino lost his temper during the encounter, drew his sword, and swiftly sliced off a chunk of Jenkins's left ear, handed it back to him, and said, quote, "Take this to your king and tell him I'll do the same to him if he sends any more of his
I mean, that's
ships
pretty
here."
tough. That that's tough. I'm not gonna lie. That dude, I want that dude in my corner.
Yeah. And so, like, that's again what's reported that he said. And so, whether it actually happened that way, we'll kind of probably never know. But old Captain Robert Jenkins, he maintained that that's what happened, that a part of his ear had been chunked off by homeboy with a sword. And, you know, I think we're starting to get to the crux of the story, right? And so the thing is, Britain had every reason to portray Captain Robert Jenkins as this like innocent merchant, brutally attacked by the Spaniards while conducting legitimate businesses, right? Spain had every reason to portray Captain, what was his name? Fandino, right? As this like law abiding, Spanish guy who governed these ships and is just trying to protect his country and his country's trades. Okay.
I was gonna say, like, they both sound very patriotic,
Yes.
right? The British they're just trying to make a living, and the Spanish people are like, we're just trying to protect our livelihood and our nation. And, You know, like, I can see
Yeah.
that.
So, kind of like fast forward a little bit. Jenkins, by the time he lands back in Britain, he testifies, on God before Parliament about his treatment. Okay, like, this is what this homeboy did to me. Here's my ear. Like, walked in with it, accordingly, or not accordingly. What's the word? Allegedly walked into Parliament with like a jar holding his ear and being like, that dude cut my ear off, and here's the proof. Okay.
Uh, so okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was like, y'all better figure out how to make a brine for this. We got to sail all the way back with it. We got to get to the parliament. We got to keep this ear intact. Like this chunk of ear, got to keep it ready.
Yeah. They didn't put it on ice, I'm sure.
Well, that's why I
Right.
said they made a brine. Like they did
Oh,
a sea type of,
ah,
you know,
yeah, yeah. I got you.
way.
And so everybody's like, enraged, right? Like, how can these dirty, rotten Spaniards do this to poor Captain, whatever his name is,
Jenkins,
Jenkins,
right?
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And Britain's like, oh, yeah, we got your back and we're totally going to get them back for it. The problem was their revenge took its time, and it didn't happen for like not just a few days or a few weeks or a few months, but for 8 years.
They planned their revenge for 8 years. How do you remember it for that long?
So
How are
Jenkins,
any of these people still alive? Like, the lifespan of people in the 1730s is, like, 8 years. You know what I mean? Like, most of them are dead by now. Like, this is insane.
yeah, I mean, so Jenkins returned to Britain in 1731, and Britain in 1739 finally declares war.
You know, and don't you know Jenkins was like, "I thought you guys had my back." Like, this is kind of one of those, like, "Yeah, I'm getting to it." It's like when Bailey asks me to do stuff and I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I'm working on it. No, I'm getting to that." And then Bailey's like every day, like, "Hey, have you done that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I haven't, but yeah, like I'm getting to it." Yeah, it's
Yeah.
on there.
And, like, also to keep in mind, like, during these 8 years, there's a lot of, like, pressure on the prime minister because it's like, you can't bow down to the Spaniards, and then, like, and they cut Captain Jenkins's ear off. Like, that was the toppling point, like, not anything else. It's they cut his ear off, and people were pissed. And so for
Well,
8
yeah, it's
years,
insult to injury. It's insult to injury.
yeah, no pun intended, right? And so eventually the political pressure became too much. Over those 8 years became too much. Parliament demanded action. Britain sought compensation and concessions from Spain because they're like, you did all this awful stuff and you cut our favorite captain's ear off. And so they tried to negotiate, but obviously the negotiations failed to resolve the growing trade disputes. And so King George II officially declared war on Spain in October of 1739, 8 years later. And so fast forward, this war goes on for like 9 years. There was a massive attack in 1741, ended in disaster. There was disease, Spanish defenses destroying much of the expedition, and it's just blah. Okay. So finally, in 1748, there's a treaty, the Treaty of Aix-la-Chapelle, which is weird because you said Dave Chappelle earlier, which had restored most of how things had been to year, like before, right? So after years and years and years and years of fighting, huge losses on both sides and enormous expenses, everything just kind of like stopped. You know what I mean? There wasn't like a big win either way.
I was gonna say, it sounds like it literally just went back to square one.
Yes.
They just kind of were like, I mean, I guess we'll just go back to this really crappy petty system that we were dealing with before, even though it wasn't a good system, at least it's better than just a full-on war. So
Yeah.
we'll just do that for a bit.
And it's very much like the war of the pastry or the pastry war. What you're talking about is like, people they don't talk about like Spain's trades and the pirating and Britain's influence. And nobody talks about that 300 years later. They're just like, yeah, apparently some British captain's ear got cut off by some Spanish captain, and Parliament got super duper pissed and declared war 8 years later. And then 9 years after that, it just all kind of stopped.
I mean, so here's the deal. I love idioms and I love them because I feel like they really are appropriate all the time. And these things, the ear, the pastry, these are the straws, right? The straw that breaks the camel's back. And I think and it's again why I love this stuff, because I think that's people in general. It's just human nature. Yes, it's the trade and it's the piracy and it's the conflict, but it usually the turning point, the moment where it falls apart, is usually over the wildest, pettiest, dumbest thing.
Like an ear and a pastry.
Like an ear and a pastry.
Yeah, we should put that on a shirt somewhere. But I think it's fascinating, and it just goes to show, like, I really do hope that when Chelsea and I do kind of like historical crimes, if you will, where there's crime involved, that it makes it interesting, and it allows like even one person to go back and look through history, because it really is like, it's fascinating, and it just goes to show that we never change, right? Like everyone, and I don't want to go on a rant, because we need to close this up, but everyone talks about like, oh, how messed up our country is and our current events. And I'm just like, if you look at any historical war ever, like you have no idea how bad it's always been up until recently, as far as like luxury technology, uh what life rate, not dying in childbirth as much as, just all the things.
Sure. Sure. Well, again, what is embarrassing is that we don't change. We have all this history. We have it documented. And be like, don't be that guy, man.
Yeah.
Don't let a whole war start over a pastry. That happened one time. Don't do it again. But yet, here we are. And that's why we're still podcasting on crime.
Yeah.
Because apparently we don't change a whole
Yeah.
bunch. But I love it. I love the Petty Betty stuff. Again, I think it's fascinating, and I'm here for it. And it does kind of strangely make me want a pastry, and also to kind of look at a Van Gogh painting.
I
The whole
know.
ear thing
I know.
makes me go. Which poor Van Gogh. Everybody knows him as the dude that got his ear, or cut his own ear off. I
Yeah.
guess I
But
should
like
say. He didn't
messy
get it.
ear.
You know what I mean? Like, they don't think of how amazing his artwork was. It was just like, oh yeah, he's that guy. Cut his ear off. He was crazy.
Well, as always, you guys, thanks for hanging out. This was a fun episode. We love Shortsides, and we appreciate y'all hanging out with us and hanging around for this wild and crazy ride.
And we'll catch you on the wild side.
Bye, guys.
Later, Gators.